Hello and welcome. This is Alchemistexe, and today we're going to be taking a look at Glanz and her job plus on her ninja job. I think overall it's pretty cool to have. It is not, or she is as a unit, not what I would consider must have, but I do think that she is really cool and does something fairly rare within the game. It's something that Fury can also do, and that is the ability to lower resistances to status effects. Now, is that the most commonly used or useful thing to have? In most cases, no. In most cases, you'll either be in a situation where the map is easy and you just kill everything really fast, so there's no point in using CC, or the map is pretty hard and a lot of the enemies are immune to almost or all forms of CC, making it pointless. However, that doesn't make Disruption or CC entirely pointless, because there are going to be cases like Canon's Job++ map, where CC is pretty much essential to beating it. Like, I was not able to beat it without having to first stun the Zeba, otherwise she would have killed somebody in my team too quickly. And so figuring out which enemies in that map were vulnerable to which types, because generally they had a very small amount. Like, I think you could only stun Zeba, I think you could only berserk Oct, for example. And those are the cases where CC is incredibly valuable. And so having the ability to lower resistances to status effects can be incredibly fun. It can also be fun if you just want to mess with your enemies as well, but that's less practical. I try to just give practical advice. So the reason I chose this map is because they have fairly high resistances to status effects. This is normally just a map where you would just damage everything and call it good. So I wanted to see, well, how much CC can I inflict? And then can I viably do that? And then Zengi is just here because he's got the best all-around leader skill for Dark to give Glanz a little moment to shine. And her damage isn't terrible. It was more than that guy had max health. But mostly it was just to lower their resistances and then just start popping effects on them. And to that end, it was fairly successful. So I definitely like the direction of this job plus, because while we definitely need our Zahars, it's also fun to have units like Glanz who, rather than adding higher and higher damage numbers, they bring some kind of utility that we can then make use of, even if it's not very often. Every once in a while, there's certain characters you'll almost never use, but when you do use them, they are definitely good to have. You know, I can't say that you should prioritize these niche units first. You should get your damage dealers, your debuffers, sometimes your healers / support units up first. But then once you've got all those in every element taken care of, then you can start to focus on people that do these very specific jobs, and they can really, really help you out. That's about it for the intro spiel. First, I'm going to go over her Memento and her VCR and why I think they're pretty good and they can definitely take her to the next level. And then we'll look at her gears and skills and all that, and then do a move showcase. So yeah, let's take a look at what her Memento does. Alright, so this is Glanz's Memento. It is a normal pool, so don't feel like you're in a big rush to get it. It's not what I consider must-have, but it is good. Any Memento that gives agility as its base stat, it's always good times. It's filled with stats that she would want. / P attack, agility, all that. The snowball is what takes it to the next level as far as increasing her damage. And then as far as her VCR goes, it is nice because it will give her the ability to blind better, as well as initial jewels, which is always good, and then HP helps free her up there. So it's definitely good. Not what I consider must-have unless Glanz is like your favorite character or something, but it's, you know, say you end up pulling this Memento on just a random summon, like you're summoning for something limited. Not bad. You could definitely get some more utility out of Glanz. But I wasn't in a hurry to chase after it just because, it's normal pool and Glanz is not high on my list of units to improve. but definitely solid nonetheless. So yeah, let's take a look at her on the unit screen. Alright, so let's start by taking a look at seals, just because I think it's pretty simple in her case. I went with P attack and P defense. You could definitely do the phantom set for evasion as well. That would also make sense because she is good at evading and has a vested interest in doing so, so she lives long enough to lower resistances. And then for if you don't have her memento that just came out, her older memento, you can just pop that on her. And it's not amazing because it's just a 4-star memento. It's also weird because this is the memento that gives the VCR for Gerald, and I've always found that really confusing. But not terribly important right now, especially because I don't even think they're from the same point in the timeline. Because I think they're like way later than Gerald's timeline, so it's even more bizarre. Okay, sorry. But it will give you more dark damage as well as more HP. So, you know, it's just something to pop on her. If you have her gate 6, you could also just do whatever memento group skill you might be running. I don't think it's super important because she can have fairly low stats as long as she's got decent HP and agility and still do what she needs to do. As far as gears go, I was trying to see how much I could get her to paralyze with that gear, but you could also run the Jinkunai Satsuki if you have it, because that will give you the ability to potentially quicken yourself upon attacking, which is always nice. Pretty much any kunai user that's not Jin may want to equip that before anything else. This one can paralyze. This one I don't really love, and the other one I really don't love. One reason to not run the Jinkunai Satsuki if you feel you don't need the quicken is because the agility stat would be redundant with this Silma homemade hair ornament, which is from Spica's old memento. And as a Wratharis female unit, this is very nice on her because 1, it gives evasion, and then 2, it takes care of the agility stat, and then it gives 10 initial jewels, which if you have Glanz's VCR would be topped by that because it gives 20 rather than 10, but it's still alright, as well as 50 stop res, which situational, but still kind of good. Overall, the agility and the evasion are the main reason to run this. And then just NHP gear. Maybe you need regen armor, maybe not. Tamamo raincoat. I wasn't being super picky. This is what she had when I ran her in the intro. As far as abilities go, the reactive, of course, you want to have that to lower the stat res. That's like, in my opinion, her main deal. Her gate 2 is on her ninja leap. So it gives a 25 P attack bonus on her mobility passive. So that's nice. There's certain passives that if a character's got a gate 2, I really want them to be on that skill. One of them is either overdrive or ninja stealth or its JE equivalent. Or like Regal Garuda Blade is another one where it's like, they're just such good passives that making them better is always nice. And then she also does have overdrive, so that helps her get her damage up a bit more. For her sub, though, that one's a little interesting, because if you need to bind in days, then her job plus one is good, or if you need to do the swap position thing, which has a pretty good range, so as far as mobility goes, that could be very, very handy. If you don't need either of those two moves, and say you maybe want to do some stat debuffing instead, then you might want the Blade Master sub. Less for the damage, more for, say, you have allies that are running conditional damage on stat debuffing, something like that. Or you want the charge up from the overdrive, but I'm not sure how much difference that would make. But you have options, so that's always good to have. Now let's take a look at her gates. So HP P attack crit, everybody likes those, assuming they scale off P attack. Gate 2 is going to be 25% P attack on her ninja leap, which is great. 3, I definitely recommend getting at least a 4 because evasion is valuable to her kit. Even if the, leader skill's alright, I guess, if you don't have anything better. More stats that she would want. She's not really going to be a boss killing type unit, so I wouldn't prioritize gate 4 per se, but getting it to 4 is no problem there. And then her gate 5, if you need the mobility, it's pretty good because it gives you an extra couple of move and jump on the evasion boosting cicada move. But I would definitely prioritize 2 before 5 in her case, because I think it's more universally useful. And then, you know, if you need the couple mementos, but I wouldn't prioritize gate 6 on her unless you have her memento and you plan on using her in memento group leader skill setups. So you could definitely be thrifty when it comes to sins and bubbles and retributions and still get a pretty good build out of her. I decided to get 2 and 5 just because I wanted to see how far it takes her kit. So yeah, that is about it for her basics on the stat screen. So next I'll go to the training dummy and look over her moves one by one. It's showcase time. Alright, first of all, check out her jewel gain. It's nice, which is good because her skills aren't all cheap. But yeah, let's start out with Flying Cicada. So this is her gate 5 move. It will add move and jump +2 as well as raising evasion. So she is already fairly mobile. But we can make her even more mobile. So she is just, yeah, she's very, very good at that. Next up are a long series of CC moves. So first she can inflict blind with this sort of grenade type attack. Now keep in mind that her CC moves do damage, so you do have to worry about them missing, but she's got decent dex, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal, except in weird evasion situations with enemies. It won't hit her, but it will hit allies, so that's important to note. Then she has Nocturnal Birdsword, which is going to poison and sleep. Then she has Hidden Sword, which will do Paralyze and Bind. Which is always good. If you're using Zheng Yi, he likes anybody that can bind. Then she has Quick Binding, which will inflict Stop. And this one is a teleport. So really take advantage of her mobility. Can get right there and then stop. And then look at that. He stops on his knees because he already had so many status effects. I'm used to like them raising one arm up in that awkward frozen pose. Not important to this review, but my favorite frozen pose is Waginao with his just like arms up, or he's like in his Praise the Sun pose. But yeah, anyway, let's get back to the review here. So then finally we have Killing Blade, which this will do more damage if the target is inflicted with blind. So that's one of the reasons her VCR is good, is because you get a blind +25 on your weapons. So that just means anytime you're attacking, you have a chance to inflict it. And yeah, not terrible damage, especially if you're hitting a light opponent, but still pretty good to be able to hit like a good, 11, 12k damage. Alright, let's move on to her basic kit. Overall, it's very similar to just your typical ninja. They have their elemental seals, which don't do a lot of damage, but they are untyped, and that can be useful sometimes. So Shieldless is just a non-elemental untyped, and then she's got one of each of the elements. They all do the same thing, just different elements. It can be nice. In general, you want to do good damage, you want to be doubling up on an element, but there could be some niche situations where having access to these could be handy. And then for her 2 interesting Job Plus moves on her basic kit, she's got Sneaky Void, which will do Bind and Daze on an enemy unit, which is always good to have. And then finally, kind of a weird move, but it's interesting and really works well with her mobility. And this move is Shadow Exposure. So what she's going to do is she's going to swap positions with an opponent, and then her evasion will be greatly raised until she evades an attack once. So basically, the best case scenario is if there's an enemy that's about to do a really strong attack, you'd use it right before then, because you only get... It's not like, say, Atima's move where he raises it for 1 turn, so you're kind of good. So yeah, it's only good for 1 attack, but I think the swapping positions with the opponent is the bigger point of favor in that move rather than the evasion, because that just sounds so situational. But yeah, that is it for Glanz's kit. I don't think she's like super top tier awesome unit, but she is cool and could be very, very handy to have on certain maps. So yeah, that's all for today. Next up on the list is going to be Cannon, and I will see you all next time.